Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. Our guest today is Chetachi Egwu, Ph.D. You can find her. She does have a Twitter account, but you can mostly find her on Instagram, Dr._Tachi. She's a digital creator and host of MediaScope. Sri Srinivasan is our host. Of course, you can find him on Twitter at Sri, and he's on Instagram at Srinet. My name is Neil Parekh, and I am the executive producer of the show, occasional guest host. We are live on almost all of the social media channels. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our Digimentors website. Please like, comment, share, retweet, tag your friends, do all the things that you do on social media to make sure people know about the show. Sri is actually in Miami today. So it's the New York Times Read Along from Miami. And we'll be taking a peek at the Miami Herald in addition to the New York Times. And of course, we'll be talking with Dr. Tachi, who herself is a media star. She's also a professor. And we'll be talking about different projects she's involved with and get her take on both the Miami Herald and the New York Times. So without, I just want, before we bring on Sri, just want to make a couple of quick announcements and then bring Sri on. The show, of course, is produced by Digimentors, the consulting firm that Sri started with his friend Andrew Lee. We want to thank our sponsor, Muckrack, for all the great work that they do and appreciate their longtime sponsorship for the show. Now that we've gotten some of the housekeeping out of the way, let's bring on our host, Sri Srinivasan, live from Miami. Sri.
How are you? I'm in the Miami sun, as you can see. I'm going to just show you we're poolside in South Beach, Miami. And the pool is closed till 10 a.m., which is good because they have a live DJ, not just here, but everywhere in Miami. It seems like South Beach, everywhere you go, it's so loud, but also the weather is so beautiful. So I'm happy to be here. I know you are not so happy to be in the cold.
No, it's it's been really cold. It's going down to the single digits in the next few days at night. But I just want to point out for our viewers, of course, as you know, we do a lot to prepare for the show. And when Sri's on the road, we have to do a little extra scouting and figuring out where we're going to do the show from. Sri was on the phone with me this morning. And, well, Neil, we're trying to find a place. We might be doing it outside by the pool. I'm thinking outside by the pool at 8 a.m. It's still warm enough to sit and enjoy the show.
Yeah.
That's something.
Yes, it is, and it's and of course tomorrow is the inauguration in the U.S. The Trump second administration is going to have its inauguration indoors, and one of the best jokes I saw about that is these people who want to invade Canada and Greenland are finding DC too cold, and it's clearly they were upset about the crowd sizes and the comparisons and all of that, because that's something that we know Trump is obsessed with. We have people watching from around the world, as always. Thank you so much for being here. We are grateful to have you. Let's see who's here, who's watching. Yes, 73 degrees in Miami, and that translates to about 15 degrees Celsius or so. Let's see. Jonathan Borstein's watching from the East Village. Naomi is watching from Rhode Island, a frosty Rhode Island. And she's sharing this, folks. Whatever channel you're on, share it with your friends and family. Find me on Facebook, share it there. Find me on Instagram, share it there. Twitter, YouTube, and we're on our Digimentors channel as well. And Gunther is watching from Austria. Good morning, and thank you for being here. Stefan is watching. The NFL playoffs are today. This is considered the best weekend for football fans because you get at the semifinals of the or the quarterfinals of the Super Bowl preparation. And so there are 2 games yesterday, 2 games today, and then the college football championship is on Monday night. One thing that many international folks who come to America are shocked by is how popular college football and college basketball are in the United States. In some areas, some places, it eclipses professional sports in terms of popularity. We have another watcher from Florida in Tampa. Here's Sudha Parekh. That's Neil's mom, and this is Neil's chance to say hi to his mom every week, in addition to other phone calls he may be making to her.
Hi, Mom. I might call you. I may be making a phone call to you. We'll see.
Please call her. And Kaveri is watching. Hi, Dr. Tachi and Neil from Ireland, but via India, where I'm being spoiled by my in-laws, being fed and fussed over every moment of the day since I arrived. Looking forward to listening in. She is in India for the Jaipur Literature Festival, which starts next week. And she doesn't know it, but I'm going to be seeing her in Jaipur because I'm going to be there as well. So I'm very excited to meet Kaveri, who has been a guest on the show before, but we've never met in person. Another Florida viewer is watching. Paula says, good morning from Tallahassee, just a little bit north of Street today. And Sujana says, South Beach is definitely an interesting place, and we'll get some analysis of South Beach from Dr. Tachi, who's sitting next to me here in just a moment. And Jayanti says, watching from Gandhinagar in Gujarat, what is the news from California? And we will try to update you on that. The situation is not good, and it's very sad to see what has happened in LA all of these last 2 weeks. Ken Fisher is watching from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where it's a -3 degrees Fahrenheit bike ride this morning. What are you doing, Ken? But I guess you're used to that in Iowa. Pradnya is watching from Silver Spring. And we have lots of other folks. We'll come to you. Dr. Tachi is saying hello on YouTube, even though she's sitting right next to me. You'll meet her in just a moment. Before we get to her, we just want to show you what are some of the papers that we have for you. We're going to look at the New York Times book review. Neil, in fact, has the New York Times current edition. He was able to get that. Before I left New York City yesterday, I was able to grab some Sunday sections arrive on Saturday, so that it's easier to catch up. And so here is the book review, 52 places to go, and we have a teaser for you. Neil is going to be able to interview the editor of the travel section. Amy Virshup is going to be our guest, and she's going to be fantastic. She's been on the show before. The travel editor of the New York Times is going to tell you about the 52 places to go edition, and also what's happening with the travel section. We also will look at the arts and leisure. Dr. Tachi is a big follower of leisure and arts and the art world. She's not a big sports fan, but the sports cover of the arts and leisure is Deion Sanders, a larger-than-life football, baseball, sports coaching figure in America. And the stunning cover is A World of Hurt. As many as 2 billion people suffer from chronic pain. Can science bring us relief? By Jennifer Kahan. I wasn't even sure what we were looking at, but that's a man's back that you can see there. You can see a little bit of his hair, and that's a stunning cover. And we'll also be looking at the Miami Herald, which we have here in Miami Beach. More than 40% of people arrested in 2024 were homeless. And look at this, an India story on the front page. A unique site in Broward County offers a glimpse at India and a portal to spirituality. The Shiva Vishnu Temple of South Florida was designed by architects from an India town known for Hindu monuments. I presume that's from Madurai, which is in Tamil Nadu. And look at this beautiful temple. So we'll talk about all of this in just a few moments, and we will look at the newspapers and get your sense. Neil, do you want to just quickly show us the cover, front page of the New York Times?
Absolutely, be happy to do that. We have the cover of the paper, and I am not as good as Sri in terms of looking at the cover and putting it on camera, but the lead story you see.
Yeah, I can see Americans
exactly.
warm to Trump's ideas, if not to Trump. Nation turns inward. broad support for policies on immigration and gender. Poll finds.
That
Gazans,
surprised me.
yeah,
I'm
it
looking forward
is.
to that article.
Yeah, Gazans dream of going back even to rubble, an indescribable mix of relief and grief. And this is inside Copter 17's terrifying ride above an inferno. Mother Nature was in control that night. What a terrible situation there. And I love how you're doing this, Neil. Gilgamesh Ponce and the quest to live forever, from ancient alchemy to molecular biology. Yes, lots of people want to live forever. And polio survivors reject Kennedy and pin hopes on McConnell. Oh my God, I don't know what the McConnell part of this is. And then there's a story there about the TikTok ban also.
What's missing?
Yeah, and
what's missing in TikTok ban? A viral protest.
Yes,
which is interesting.
Yeah,
and of course,
go ahead.
There's a reefer for the 52 places to go right in the middle of the paper. I'll make a comment, Sri, about the McConnell thing. That's all eyes are on McConnell as RFK Jr. is getting ready to have his confirmation hearing, since McConnell is a polio survivor, and he has spoken out against the RFK Jr.'s vaccine nonsense. So that's where they're hoping that maybe McConnell will slow things down. TikTok.
Yes. Yeah, here's what it says on the front page of TikTok right now. Sorry, TikTok isn't available. This is in the US. A law banning TikTok has been enacted. We are fortunate that President Trump has indicated he will work with us to reinstate TikTok. And he's been, the CEO has been sucking up to Trump. He's going to be at the inauguration. So I'm confident that TikTok will come back in the US, but it's not available right now. You can download all your data, as you can see on there, and people can do that. So I'm confident it'll come back. And one of the things I'll just say about Mr. RFK Jr. is that the New York Times reported that after the vaccine was rolled out, the Trump-launched COVID vaccine was rolled out, huge success, saved hundreds of thousands of lives. During that moment when everyone was lining up to get the COVID vaccine, he went out of his way to file legal motions to cancel the vaccine. And so in a way, he is slamming Trump's own vaccine. You remember Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll play a role in whether he is confirmed or not. So that's what's going on here. And
this is the TikTok article.
Sure. What is missing in the ban on TikTok? So I think with all of that, we are now ready to meet our guest, who's here with me in person in Miami, and we're delighted to have her here with us. We're going to tell you all about her in just a moment. Folks, share this with your friends and family. Tell them that we are live on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, and on our digimentors.group page. There's so much to see and hear as we talk about what's happening in the world. You all know the show with Jerry Seinfeld called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. This is two folks talking about the newspaper and having some fun. And our guest is Dr. Tachi, who is a podcaster, a blogger, a professor, and she is the host of MediaScope on all the social media channels. And she is available on Instagram. That's her main jam, Dr._Tachi. And I am delighted and honored to have her here with us in her hometown of Miami.
Hey!
How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you? Welcome to Miami.
Thank you. What a beautiful place. A complicated, confusing place that Florida and Florida politics is,
yes.
As you know better than anyone.
Yes.
But you get to live here, and it's always beautiful. But sometimes it rains. It rained overnight. I was surprised.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of needed it. It hadn't been raining, so even when it rains, it's still beautiful.
And it somehow disappears and comes back really fast.
That's all it does.
Those of us who are used to monsoons know that feeling. And Dr. Tachi and I have never met in person, but we've known each other for years online, and I follow her shows and comment whenever I can. And so tell us a little bit, Dr. Tachi, about your career, your work, and how people can find you and what they can find when they find you.
Okay, absolutely. So everybody knows my name is Dr. Tachi, Chetachi Egwu, Ph.D. I am a media professor, a filmmaker, a media content producer, and I'm also a journalist. They mentioned that I am the host of a show called MediaScope, and it's basically a live stream that I do about all things media, tech, and pop culture. We are now going into year 10 of that. So you can identify.
Yeah, but I'm only year 9. You're year 10, so you got me beat. Yeah.
We're going into year 10, and lots of interesting things going on. And for me, the next logical step as a live streamer, because I've been in the live streaming community even before I started doing MediaScope. I've been running live streams for people since about 2011. And so the next logical thing was to get a bunch of us together that actually live stream and start our own network. So in March, we launched IndieSoup Media, and it is a bunch of us, like 25 creators who have shows on a Monday through Friday. So that's what I'm doing now. And
wow.
You can find me over there. You can find me on all platforms for MediaScope. And then the best way to reach me is Instagram.
Instagram, Dr._Tachi.
Yes.
I love this from Pradnya. Amazing. Love a smart woman in a bucket hat. There you go. You love your hats. Talk about
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, hats are my thing. Partially because sometimes I'm too lazy to do my hair. I have a lot of it, but also it's it's okay. It's okay. You got some. It's a signature thing for me. The hats, the sunglasses. It's a way to stand out. I don't know if you knew this, but before all of this, I wanted to go into fashion design. So my thing was I was going to go to FIT or Parsons for fashion design. Yeah, so I'm African. African parents, that's not the plan for you. It's doctor, lawyer, engineer, or disgrace to the family. So rather than disgrace the family, I chose my second thing, which was communication. And so that's where the love of hats and clothing and accessories and things comes from.
Tell us about your African connections.
Yeah, so I'm Nigerian. I I was not born there. My parents are born and raised there. My father came to the U.S., to Iowa, in 1960 or 61 to go to school. And I mean, that's what Africa, wherever there's a school, you'll find Nigerians. And then my mother went to England first, and she lived there for about 10 years, and then came here, and my parents met. And so, yeah.
Okay. And we have friends who tell us that there are pockets of Nigerians, communities built all over the U.S., including in North Carolina, where there are Christmas services for the Nigerian community, just exclusively Nigerian churches.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, not so much. There is a small Nigerian community, but it's not as much as places like Texas is Nigeria Central. If you go to Dallas or Houston, Nigerians all over the place. LA, particularly Long Beach, lots of Nigerians. New York, of course, Maryland, DC, Virginia. So there are pockets all over the U.S.
Yeah. All right. Denia says, congrats on 10 years of the show. And Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar says, it's so nice to see you and the guest in the same room, pre-COVID vibes. And I want to talk to Dr. Sujana at some point to just hear where we are with the health situation. Dr. Sujana has been on our show multiple times and hosts her own show called She's on Call. One of the things I just saw is that there's bird flu in Georgia, and it's such a big problem that they've shut down all poultry work as an emergency. And Georgia is the #1 producer of eggs in the country. So all these people who wanted the price of eggs to fall immediately, that is not going to happen. It was not going to happen anyway because Trump wasn't going to take any interest in that. He's focusing on Greenland and other made-up crises.
No, but you want eggs.
Yeah.
Where are they now?
Yeah. So let's see who else is watching. Sudha says, our guest has a beautiful history.
Thank you.
And Sujana is telling us again, as Neil did, that McConnell had polio, and fools think that'll make him stand up to Trump's pick. So she's saying it's not going to make a difference, but some people think he will stand up.
No, even the thing of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, with TikTok, and when I saw that page of hopefully President Trump, I'm like, well, I'm glad you believe him. The faith that people have in him to do the quote right thing or the thing they want, he's proven over and over he's not going to do it. So we'll see. We'll see.
So Jenna is asking, where's the coverage of the huge People's March in D.C. yesterday? They were not afraid of the cold. That's right. There were a lot of people there, but it's not on the front page of the Herald and not on the front page of the New York Times. And this is one of the things that what kind of coverage will be there of people who are protesting and things like that. And Doug Levy's watching from LA. He's up at 5:30 on a Sunday morning. Are you a morning person?
I'm a morning person and an evening person, which means I don't get very much sleep.
Yes, that sounds scary. And Stefan's reminding us that the devastating wildfires are not over and much help is needed for thousands of people in Southern California. Please continue to donate, and please donate to valid links. Go through the Red Cross and other places that you trust. Carol is watching and says, watching from Tampa Bay. So we got like a Florida edition going here. And Rajni is watching from Toronto. Have you been to Toronto?
I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, that's Toronto.
So that's basically the same area. I was in Toronto all the time.
Yeah, and Diane's watching from Margate, New Jersey, where many locals go to Florida this time of year. We call them snowbirds.
Yes.
What is the attitude of people like you to the snowbirds who come and go?
I don't care. It makes sense. At one point, the cost of living here was so much cheaper that it was affordable to be able to have a second home or a second place to come when it was cold. But since then, the prices have exploded here. So it's getting more and more difficult for that to be a case.
I hear you. And Prasanna says, good evening from scintillating Chennai in India. I've not heard that adjective, but Chennai is wonderful. I'm a son-in-law of Chennai, so I only say good things about it. And let's see who else is here. And Kaveri says, so many Nigerian Catholic priests in Ireland now making up for the shortfall in priests in Ireland.
Yeah.
So that's a thing that we're seeing. And up too early on the left coast, I'm so thrilled to find Sri and Dr. Egwu live, says Amy. Hi, Amy. Thank you. Neil.
I'm just breaking in, Sri, on the discussion around the march, the People's March yesterday in Washington, D.C. I checked my copy of the Times. It's not until page 25 with a smallish picture and not much real estate for an article that they cover that march, which is a far cry from the Women's March, if you remember, back in 2016 after Trump was first elected. So we'll get to that in just a minute, but I just want to let folks know that it's in the paper, but kind of buried.
Yeah, not on the front page, and that's sad to hear that. Just talking about the fires, I just want to show one thing here. My newsletter, which is out this morning, we got up early to write it, is Climate Refugees in America. We are not prepared, is what I say. And I'll just read you the first sentence here. By the way, this is a cartoon by the great Matt Davies of Newsday, a Pulitzer Prize winner, and he's showing GOP Congress just pouring on, not useful stuff about the LA fires. But here's what I said: climate refugees. That term evokes images of South Pacific Islanders whose isles have been consumed by the ocean, or movie characters in a faraway future, not Los Angelinos, North Carolinians, or Floridians in 2025. But that's exactly what's happening. And this is USA Today, not Greenpeace or the Sierra Club, said in many cases, people who can't or don't want to rebuild will become part of the growing number of climate refugees forced to relocate following natural disasters supercharged by climate change. And this is all in my newsletter. I hope you will all subscribe. It's srinet.substack.com, srinet.substack.com. It's also on LinkedIn. You can find it. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll find it there as well. So we love your thoughts and your feedback. There's lots of data about what's happening with climate change. And we also have some tech tips from our friend Bob Anthony, who is a journalist and tech reporter, talking about how you can be prepared for fire safety issues. So please take a look at that, and we'd love your feedback. srinet.substack.com. Do you have a newsletter?
No.
You have every other
I
kind
have
of.
everything else, but I need that. What I need is an assistant so that I can do a newsletter.
All right. Thank you for those of you who read it, who open it, who subscribe. And Jonathan says, did you check Liza Donnelly's live coverage of the event? He's talking about her exhibition at the Society of Illustrators, so he's talking about the march against Trump, the People's March, but also the exhibition that she's done about 100 years of the New Yorker cartoons. And I got to go there and check it out. It was lots of fun, and to see Liza there as well. It's called Drawn from the New Yorker. And Liza, who's been on the show before, is going to come back. She's a New Yorker cartoonist who works with us, and a centennial celebration. And I got to meet Bob Mankoff, the famous editor of New York Times cartoons, and it was really fun to see him. And so I think we want to now talk about all the cool stuff that you do, Dr. Tachi. Yeah. What are some of the things you're focused on, and as you look, what are the things you're proud of last year, and as you're looking forward to 2025?
Well, obviously, I'm proud of the fact that I was able to start the network, and that I have a bunch of people that believe in my shenanigans, regardless. I think that's one thing that I'm really proud of, that we've been able to come together and start to build something big. And I think it's important, especially in the media space, that we have independent voices and independent creators, and are not just reliant on the quote mainstream media or legacy media for news, for entertainment, etc. So I'm really proud of that, I think.
What are the subjects that you focus on, and what should we be paying attention to?
You mean in terms of the network, or just in general? Yeah. Okay, so the network, we have 4 major themes, and lots of content falls underneath that. So we are arts and entertainment, lifestyle, business, tech, and education, and then global content and current issues. So you can see a lot of stuff falls underneath that. And so on the network, we've got everything from a twice weekly show, the Dr. Vibe Show, and he talks about, well, not the Dr. Vibe Show, the Morning Vibe. And he'll talk about, it's based out of Toronto, Ontario, and he'll talk about what's happening with Black Canada, basically. And we have another one of his shows called Black Canada talking about Black Canada's.
I would say we don't. There's not much awareness of Black Canada in the U.S. No. We barely talk about Black Canadians, and Canada is a very multicultural place. One of the leaders of the opposition happens to be a Sikh American, yes. And so it's very interesting that we hear mostly about white Canada, but it is a multicultural place, especially if you go out to places like Vancouver, Toronto, very multicultural.
Exactly. Now, and the thing is too, that in this country, when we say Black, the assumption is African American, and there are so many other Black experiences outside of Black. I mean, myself being a thing, I'm an amalgamation of the continental African experience and the African American experience. So I think that's really interesting that we have that show.
So how do people who are of African descent, as first generation, second generation, compared to folks of African descent who've been, who were brought here as slaves, they're descendants of people who were brought here as slaves 400 years ago. Yeah. How do you distinguish when you hear African American? How does that land with you? How does that land with your family when we first started moving from other uses, other terms that we used to use to African American? And people like Elon Musk have parodied the whole thing by saying he's African American because he's from South Africa. So right. Talk a little bit about that. Educate us as a person of, you said continental Africa. Yeah. So talk about that. There's also the Caribbean, Black folks from the Caribbean. So do you prefer Black to African American? How should we as allies be thinking about all this?
So I tend not to call myself African American because I'm not. African American really refers to Black people who have been in the United States or in the Americas for generations. Their family had been there here for generations. So I tend not to say that. Black for me is fine. African is even better. But I consider anybody who is of African descent, you are of the diaspora, and to me, you are African. Now, what you choose to call yourself is what you choose to call yourself. I can say you're African and you don't identify with that. Well, that's fine. I will not force you to be African. But then don't come to me when you're trying to be African. I'll just say that. But so the ship has sailed. But whatever you want, I think self-identification is key in all of this. So I don't call myself African American. My parents, they say they're African. And then, you know, the whole thing is too, I think there's more of a tendency to identify with those labels here because of the history. Whereas when you go elsewhere, you are Nigerian, Ghanaian, from Sierra Leonean, right? Wherever you happen to be from. And then even deeper, yeah, I'm Nigerian, but I'm Igbo. So you've got Igbo, Yoruba, and all the different ethnic groups. So you tend to even further dissect how you identify based on your ethnic group. But then you come here and you get lumped into one bucket. And I guess you go with it. I don't mind being lumped because we're all of the diaspora.
And I saw that you had originally said, you know, you're African.
Yeah.
And even though you're second generation, you still consider yourself African, just like I might say Indian American or Indian. And here is, speaking of labels, Pradnya says they were enslaved. They were not brought here as slaves. I had said they were, yeah. So
yes,
this terminology matters.
It absolutely does, because enslavement talks about a condition, while being a slave talks about you as an individual. So I always say enslaved Africans win.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the relationship between folks who are from Africa, as you are, and African Americans who've been here for generations. What is the community like? What are similarities and what are differences? Are there tensions? Are there efforts to connect better? Talk about that.
There definitely are some tensions. I think it's gotten much better now. The more we go on in years, the better it is. So when you look at continental Africans' presence in the U.S., that really began after the independence of many of these countries. So for example, Nigeria got its independence in 1960. I think the first of the African countries to get their independence was in 57, if I'm not mistaken. Someone can correct me. But then what was happening is these countries were wanting to build a future away from the colonial rule and colonial mindset. So they said, okay, we're going to give you scholarships to go abroad and come back and build Nigeria, or come back and build Ghana, or whatever the case may be. So you find, in fact, the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, went to Lincoln University, which is a historic HBCU in Lincoln, Pennsylvania, right? And so you see a lot of that. You see a lot of continental Africans that went to these universities because the goal was to go back and build. But then some things started to happen. Like my parents could not go back because there was a war, a civil war in Nigeria, the Biafran War. And so even though they came abroad with the intent of getting an education to go back and build, they could not. And that happened in many African countries. So I think that precluded people from doing that. So I said that long dissertation defense to let you know that they came here for a very specific reason. So then I can imagine you see another group that comes here, another immigrant group that comes here, and there may be different considerations for them. Somehow they're different because they're not African American. And so I can see where there would be some resentment there. And so that's where the original and initial tensions came from. But I think there's some of them are still there, but they're starting to fade, I think.
Here are some independence dates. Of course, we know that Liberia became independent long before, and we know the story of Liberia, and
Yes.
we see South Africa was 1910, Egypt 22, Ethiopia, and then I'll just mark that spot was 1947 was India, and then you see Libya was 51, Sudan was 56, Morocco 56, Tunisia, and you can see that kind of sub-Saharan Africa wasn't until later. And you can
Right,
see
so
here,
like 1957, right.
Yeah, there you go, 58, 60. So very, very interesting. Neil, go ahead.
1960, France and Belgium. That's really the big wave from January 1960. Cameroon, Senegal, Togo, Mali,
Look at all
Madagascar,
those yeah.
Exactly.
Somalia, Niger, Benin, all of these countries.
And I would take
Cote
issue with
d'Ivoire.
South Africa, because South Africa was really never free
Until
until 1994, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
94, yeah.
Absolutely agree. But here's a question for you, Dr. Tachi, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because they have Egypt on the list early, right? As 1922 from Britain. Having lived in Egypt, I know that there's a certain kind of identity issue. People in Egypt don't identify as African or as being part of Africa. What about the reverse? Does the rest of Africa think of Egypt as African, or more Middle East and kind of North Africa, like something different?
Yeah, I don't know that I can speak for all of sub-Saharan Africa.
No, sorry.
But,
Of course not.
okay.
Of course not.
But I would think for a large extent, yes, especially when you talk about Libya and Muammar Gaddafi and his.
He emphasized the Africanness.
He emphasized the Africanness of North Africa.
Yeah,
Yes, he was definitely a Pan-Africanist. So, regardless of what you think about him, that was really one big thing to emphasize, that North Africa was Africa. So I think, and then the things that he did in terms of helping, sending money during different struggles, etc. So I think that helped to solidify in sub-Saharan Africa's mind that yes, they are Africa, even though that many of them identify more with the Arabic countries. North Africa is really solidly Muslim, and that's fine and that's okay. But then we have to look at originally at what happened. The people who live in North Africa now, are not all the original inhabitants. So there were people that we would consider sub-Saharan that lived in those areas prior to Arab influence. So
that's another dimension.
That's
another dimension.
I'll also throw out, and we haven't touched on this yet, Dr. Tachi, but of course, racism, obviously in the U.S., but in other countries as well. In Egypt, that's a huge issue when you look at people from the south of Egypt, and much less people coming from Sudan, etc. The racism based on color and based on skin color is a huge issue in Egypt. And I mean, not to mention South Africa's experience, but what about other countries in Africa? Do you see that same variation and that same bias?
What we see, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, with the exception of South Africa, Namibia, which still has a very strong colonizer influence, Botswana, etc. When you look at the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, you do see colorism. So rather than a racism, there is classism, and then there's colorism. And I'm sure you all being from India,
India.
Colorism is huge.
That was my next. I was going to get that right in after you finish your answer. That obviously in India as well, it's a huge issue. So certainly not shying away from that.
It's huge.
One of our friends, Nina Dabaluri, who was Miss USA a few years ago, is working on a big documentary about colorism. She is a darker skinned Indian American, and she talks about how within the Indian community, she may not have won a lot of beauty pageants herself because she's not considered the classic, like a Bollywood beauty, if you see that. And so she talks about that, and she's working on a documentary on that topic. So
it's interesting. That reminds me of one of my favorite filmmakers is Mira Nair.
Oh, yeah.
And with Mississippi Masala, and she said when Mina was trying to get Harry Patel, and they were gossiping on the phone. She said, "You can be dark and have money, or fair and have no money, but you can't be dark and have no money and get Harry Patel." So really stuck out to me, because it's real, and that's throughout the world,
Oh, yeah.
even in China, in Japan, the fairer you are.
Korea, where everybody is, you think is of certain skin color. There's colorism there as well.
Huge.
Pradnya says India, a center of colorism. I'd say the center of colorism. And this is a chance to talk about our friends at the Blindian Project, which brings together Black and brown communities, including couples who are African American or African descent, connected with people who are South Asian. And this is a great project, Blindian Project. Everybody, please check it out. And let me say hello to Ron Thomas, who's watching from Verona, New Jersey. Ron is usually in Dubai. Ron, I'm going to be back in Dubai in February. I hope I'll see you there. Otherwise, I'll see you in New York before you leave. I'm back. I'm in Miami. Let's tell everybody what we're doing, who this is, where I am. I'm Sri. I'm in Miami, her hometown. This is Dr. Tachi. She is a podcaster, blogger, someone who teaches media. She's also the creator of the IndieSoup network of podcasters. There are 22 of you?
25 and then 30 shows.
Whoa, wow.
Yeah.
So everyone, please check that out. And we are in beautiful South Beach, Miami. I'm here for the 90th birthday celebrations of Donald Rubin, who many of you who've been to New York know, the Rubin Museum of Himalayan Art, one of the great museums in New York. It's now turning into a virtual museum, and its art is traveling all over the world. And we're saying happy birthday to Donald. And we are talking about the news. So every Sunday, Neil and I read a newspaper together on social media. We've been doing this for 9 years. Today, we're going to just switch to talking about the Miami Herald as well as the New York Times. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to get to that in just a minute. Let's see who's watching. Mary says, my niece, Cheryl Bedford, a filmmaker in LA, produced the documentary Dark Girls on colorism. She herself is a dark girl who has some interesting experiences in Hollywood. Listening from Charlotte, North Carolina. Mary, you're awesome. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a big supporter of the show. Mary and I and Neil worked on live coverage of election night, election day, election week. And we had so much fun. We learned so much together. And that was an amazing experience. Mary C. Curtis, check her out. She's a columnist and guest all over all the big shows, so check her out. And Naomi says, just shared this info, wish I could attend. And that she's talking about the New Yorker cartoon exhibition in New York City. And Neil is posting something about the independence dates of African countries. And Jonah says, hey, enjoying the conversation today and appreciate the love, my friends. Jonah is the founder, creator, creative force behind Blindian Project. Oh. And you haven't met yet, but I want you guys to know each other.
Yes.
Jonah's in London, outside London. He founded the project. His parents are from Uganda. He's an American.
Okay, I can tell by the last name.
Yeah, from Uganda. An American, but lives in London, has a South Indian American wife, or South Indian British wife, and South Indian kids, Black South Indian kids.
Wow.
And we had so much fun when he came to New York, and we hosted an event for the Blindian Project. Check out his Instagram. Check out everything they're doing. Check out her Instagram, Dr._Tachi on IG. Just glad to have everybody here. And Kaveri says, most folks have PhDs in colorism in the subcontinent. Sad to say, but we have somebody who has a real PhD right here. Dr. Tachi, tell us about your PhD. And you went to Howard University, one of the great schools in America, happens to be a great HBCU, a historically Black college. Among the alums there, the current vice president for Another Day, Kamala Harris, is a bison, as well as so many other great folks, including Black Panther himself.
Yes,
Chadwick,
yeah,
and Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman. Oh, two Black Panthers.
So wait, so tell me.
So the Black Panther Party.
Okay.
Stokely Carmichael, who was one of the instrumental people in the Black Panther Party, who later became Kwame Ture, also went to Howard University. So when you said Black Panther, I was like, yeah, Kwame Ture went there.
So it shows you she's a serious person thinking about the Black Panther political party, action party that had a huge influence in the 60s and 70s in the US. I was thinking of Wakanda and the Black Panther comic strip and movie, and Chadwick Boseman played the
T'Challa.
in the show. Yeah.
Yes, and we were actually, so I didn't know him, but we were at Howard at the same time. So he was an undergrad, and I was a master's student.
Okay.
So we graduated at the same time.
The same ceremony.
The same ceremony. We were in the same ceremony.
Thousands of people there.
Thousands of people. So, but it's, 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, even less. And
Yeah.
we of course lost a great talent when
Yes.
he passed. Tell us just very quickly about the Bison community, how they reacted to Kamala Harris becoming vice president, and then her campaign, and what was that like? And it's not just about the politics; it's about having someone in your school at the highest offices in the land.
Howard produces a lot of notables in the arts and entertainment, in politics, across the board. There's someone that has been touched by someone that went to Howard. So we were really very proud. It was amazing to have that moment. And then to have Kamala Harris as the first Black woman, to have the Black South Asian woman, to have the nomination for president, that was huge for us. I think, Bison, we're very proud, and we find a way to slide Howard University into anything. Would you pass the bread? We used to have bread at Howard University. We will do that for anything. And it's just because of this pride that has been instilled in us. So we were proud, but it's also like, but of course, she went to Howard. It's like, when you're there, and this is why I really give so much credit to having been a Ph.D. student at Howard. I would not be the scholar I am today had I gone to another institution, I think. They took a personal stake in how well you did, and one thing you're not going to do is go out there and embarrass them. So either you will hold your head high and with pride because you are a student at Howard University. You are an alumni of Howard University. So we were really proud, but we also expected it because that's what we do.
That's wonderful. And you could have gone to other schools that are not historically Black universities. Yeah. Talk a little bit about why it is that we still need historically Black schools. You touched upon it just a bit, but why we have them and why it is we are seeing a kind of resurgence in young kids who could go to other schools are choosing to go to HBCUs. Especially we have an international audience that's not familiar as much with HBCUs.
Right. So just to clarify, HBCU stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. They were started mostly just right after the Civil War because Black people could not go to other universities. So there were, that many churches, like there are some that are affiliated with the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the Baptist Church here in Florida, South Florida. Florida Memorial University is a Baptist institution. And so you had a lot of help by people that were abolitionists, et cetera, who were instrumental in the founding of these universities. And so we need them now more than ever because of the fact that, look at what's happening, the onslaught, the fact that we're shown at every turn that they don't want us here, we don't belong, and sometimes it's like, okay, that's fine, I'm not going to fight you. So let me be where I'm going to have a sense of self, where I'm going to feel where I belong, and that does not mean that you do not belong in other spaces. But there's a level of pride and esteem and attention to detail that you have when you're at an HBCU. And honestly, that just makes you a better citizen.
So interesting. Do you see any comparisons between the movement to have young girls in high school go to girls-only high school so they can have that same sense of, safe, kind of a safe space where they can shine? Do you see that in with the way that HBCUs have been successful?
Yeah. There's that same type of spirit, I think, that before you can, in some cases, before you can adequately band together with others and make something fruitful happen, you have to have a sense of self and know that you can do it. And sometimes the best way to do that is among like minds. And that doesn't always mean people that are the same color. It's among like minds, because I just had on MediaScope the other day, one of my classmates his handle was White Bison because
he was white.
yeah, we had a lot of, and this is the misconception. HBCUs are very international. There are, I had a class at Howard where I was the only Black person in class. Everybody else was from the Middle East.
Mm.
So it's very international. Because of the great work they do, they draw people from all over the world. And so it's really a microcosm of what America is.
Mm-hmm. All right. Jonah says, I'll reach out to you, Chetachi. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. And he's, of course, the creator of the Blindian Project. There's the URL for that. And Pradnya heard you say, I can tell by the last name he's Ugandan. She says, I thought only Indians did that.
No, Africans do that too.
I see a lot of connections between Indians and people from Africa. And yes. Stefan is tagging people. Everybody, please tag your friends. This wonderful conversation, they can watch us live or later on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, as well as digimentors.group. And we have a mailing list of our shows coming up, very low volume. And Neil will write to you, will send you information. Check out, just email him, neil@digimentors.group, and he'll add you to our mailing list. And I just want to tell you what show we have coming up next week. Terrific show with a terrific guest. Amy Virshup is going to be here. She's a travel editor of the New York Times. And she's going to be talking about 52 places to go. This is the special New York Times edition. You can find it online. It's in print this week, but we're going to save it for next week when Neil will get to interview her. I'm going to be headed to the Jaipur Lit Fest, so I won't be there, but Neil will interview Amy. And just before the pandemic, while I was traveling in India at that time, this issue came out, and Neil got to go to the home of the editor of the travel editor of the New York Times to talk about travel in the New York Times. It was so much fun to to watch Neil be there. So please, everybody, tune in next week and tell your friends about this show. Right now, Radyan is watching from Bayshore, Long Island. Have you spent time in Long Island?
A little bit of time in Long Island. I did actually used to live in New York for a little bit. I lived in Brooklyn, so yeah.
You hide that well.
Yeah.
You give a whole vibe of Florida so well. So Radyan says Indonesians do that too in terms of last names and identify people as well. Neil.
So Sri, just a quick teaser for next week and the show. And of course, Amy will be there. It'll be a huge thrill for me to interview her again. But Dr. Tachi, one of the places on the list is Benin City, Nigeria.
Wow.
What can you tell us about Benin City? They highlight the Museum of West African Art there, and it was designed by the architect who designed the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And that's really their big focal point.
Absolutely, a great kingdom. So when we talk about Benin City, we're talking about the kingdom of Benin, and there is a current day Benin today.
Yeah, country of
Benin. Yes. So let's remember that before Europeans came to Africa, there were no divisions of Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia. These were artificial borders that were drawn up by Europeans sitting at a table and said, you're going to take this, you're going to take this. That's another story. But when we talk about Benin, we're talking about a great kingdom of Benin where the arts was highly prized. This is where you see a lot of the bronze and often gold sculptures, statues as well. So just a wonderful history to Benin City.
That's good to know. So tune in next week, folks, for everything about the 52 places to go. I just want to say, how scary is this? Greenland is one of the places that they have put in the 52 places to go. It says a pristine Arctic wilderness area gets a glossy new getaway. And, we shouldn't show Trump that, but I know they must have made this list long before the current crisis. And again, I want to remind everyone of the joke that I'm here in Miami where it's super hot and warm and beautiful. The inauguration is tomorrow. It's been moved indoors because it's too cold. And these are people who want to move to Greenland where it can be minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And one of the few things I remember from physics class is that at minus 40, Celsius and Fahrenheit are the same. They connect at minus 40. So that's how cold it is in Greenland. And these people didn't want to be outside for the inauguration. I learned this as well when I spent time in Scandinavia because of my work with the Nobel Prizes. And there also, the way the temperature eventually meets at minus 40 is really interesting.
Wow.
Neil.
I was just going to share with folks, in case they were interested, the weather report from Greenland. It's a balmy 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's pretty
So,
warm.
you know,
Wait,
I think
that's warmer than New York City.
That's pretty
warmer
warm.
than here. And you know, it's very possible. Maybe it's going to be. I mean, we'll hear from Amy Virshup when they put the 52 places to go list together. They're looking for things that are new museums or a reason to go. You know, kind of they're being a little bit of a travel guide. It may be the first time in history that a destination is on the list 2 years in a row, because next year it may be on the list as go visit the 51st state.
Oh my God.
Don't even put that into the atmosphere, Neil.
That's good. Rajan says, love you, Dr. Tachi. And Ron is tagging his friend Jacqueline. Everybody do that. And you mentioned the pens of the cartographers that defined the world and defined Africa. And Rupa says, so much evil done by those pens of the cartographers who divided communities. And that is so true in India. We see that in India and Pakistan. These lines are just drawn through villages, drawn through people's homes, farms, and the devastation that resulted from that was really problematic. Folks, we have about 30 minutes left with Dr. Tachi, and we're going to switch to looking at the Miami Herald, and then we're going to look at the New York Times. And Dr. Tachi is going to give us her take on the news from her hometown. So I'm just going to give her the Miami Herald, and I'm going to turn on my New York Times camera, and we are going to discuss the news. So we're going to do just a quick look through this, and then Neil's going to show us the New York Times. So the Miami Herald, in Miami Beach, more than 40% of people arrested in 2024 were homeless. Talk a little bit about the story and how much of a problem is homelessness here as we hear about it in DC, LA, San Francisco, New York. Huge problem.
This is huge, and I'm noticing even personally that, so I moved here in 2005, and obviously there had always been a homelessness crisis, but I'm noticing even more that there are people that are unhoused, let's say. So you see it a lot, even in areas where you would not see it before, you see it so much more. So it's huge, and then the fact is, there is something behind being homeless. It's not just homelessness for homelessness sake. Some of it is because of finances, but then some of it is also the mental illness, right? So mental illness is a huge problem, and it's not being dealt with. So I guess DeSantis' answer to all of this is...
That's Governor Ron DeSantis,
correct.
Who is a very problematic figure.
Extremely problematic. So rather than solve the problem at the root, which in some cases is mental illness, it's like, okay, well, let's arrest them. So when people come here, they won't see all of the homelessness. They won't see these issues. So it's a huge problem. But I mean, I'm not expecting humanity from Ron DeSantis. So it's to be expected.
And lots of, in some conservative states, there are pockets of liberal cities like Austin and Texas. But Florida is so different because it has become, you remember when Florida was a bellwether where it could swing, Democratic or Republican, but for several elections now, it's been a firm red state.
And well, part of this is, so South Florida before used to swing a little more blue. Mm-hmm. I think, though, there's a couple of reasons for this. Broward County is still more blue. Where I live is still a little more blue. Miami-Dade, for example, is more red, and part of that is because the Spanish-speaking population here, particularly Cubans, tend to be more conservative, and they tend to be more Republican.
And that's because they found their interests were aligned with the Republicans and the strong anti-communism, anti-Castro years in the 60s and 70s, 80s.
Exactly.
And so they're still living off of that, even though so much has changed in the world, and even Cuba is a different place. Still, probably so many issues there, but still problematic. I'll just say one other thing is that homelessness in America. You mentioned some factors, but also the healthcare in America is so bad that a single devastating health issue, because you may not have insurance, can result in your being bankrupt and homeless.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I don't think people understand around the world. Let's look at this unusual India story on the front page today. Its unique site in Broward County offers a glimpse of India and a portal to spirituality. The Shiva Vishnu Temple of South Florida was designed by architects from an Indian town known for Hindu monuments. So I presume this is the town of Madurai in South India. Look at this. The world's oldest religion has a temple in Broward with South Indian roots. And the Shiva Vishnu is one of the few Hindu temples in South Florida where Hindus can come to worship, practice yoga, learn Sanskrit, share Indian food, and celebrate religious festivals. So you can see how beautiful this is. So you need to go visit.
I do. I didn't even know this was here.
Yeah. And so there's one full page in here. And they also have another full page here and showing you the celebrations of the Shiva Vishnu temple. And this is so well done. I'm so glad to see this. So bravo to Lauren Costantino, who's learning about a new culture. And look at this, arresting people without a home is the crime. Not being homelessness is not the crime.
Right.
The Super Bowl is going to be in New Orleans in 3 weeks, and they are cleaning up the city there, removing and hiding the homeless, which is what they do in a lot of places like that.
Right.
Freed opposition leader Ferrer urges Trump to be firm with Cuba, help alleviate hunger. And this is, we were just talking about Cuba, and you can see that story there as well. What else is in the paper today? Let's look very quickly. Here's local and state, how Ashley Moody's deep roots shape the future of Florida's next U.S. Senator. Marco Rubio is going to be the next Secretary of State. And American politics are so screwed up now that he seems like a perfectly reasonable, normal candidate compared to all the crazies that we have coming.
Yes. No, it's interesting that when Marco Rubio becomes the sane choice, that means something is really awry.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a man who was attacked by Trump, who attacked Trump himself.
Yes.
There's just no shame there. Anyway, so he's been appointed. He's going to be Secretary of State. So his Senate role is open. So they get to appoint a senator, and that's what's happening here. The Florida Attorney General is going to be in the U.S. Senate. One of her predecessors, Pam Bondi, is going to be Attorney General of the U.S. And she's also a very extremist, problematic person. I hear you're not a sports person.
I'm not a huge sports person unless it's like soccer or the Olympics.
Okay.
But, yeah.
What about, will you be watching the Super Bowl?
Maybe for the halftime show.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forget what the halftime show is this time.
Someone
who watching will tell us.
Yeah, someone will.
And parole program for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans continues. Trump wants it gone. So this is an interesting story. Don't move yet. Trump won't be a dictator on day one. So this is someone excusing Trump, saying it's not going to be so bad. But as we've learned with various situations, that things are going to go they may not go immediately happen, but we do know in Chicago on day one, they're going to be separating children from their parents and disrupting families. That'll happen here as well.
Absolutely. I would say this. While he's right, it's not going to happen overnight because there's a lot of getting together they need to do on their end because it's clear they're not together. But sleep with your clothes on.
Oh my God. So sad. Yeah. And problematic. Oh, here's our answer. It's Kendrick Lamar.
I was about to say Kendrick Lamar. Okay. Kendrick Lamar.
Super Bowl 2025. Neil and I and our team worked on the Pulitzer Prize the year that the ceremony, we were amplifying the ceremony the year he won the Pulitzer. And that was so much fun to get to see him in action. So Neil, I think we're done basically with there's another section here called Neighbors. That's interesting. Neighbors because these are all so many little towns make up Florida. So let me show you
Yeah.
here. Oh, 1 second. Let me just put on this camera. And let's see here. 1 second. Yeah, so, oops, here we go. So Miami is really a series of small cities, right?
Yeah.
Aventura, Doral, Miami Beach, Miami Gardens, Miami Lakes, etc. And so there's a neighbor section, 2 art installations in Miami's Locust Projects celebrate sound and movement. Tell us a little bit about Miami's art scene. It's famous for its arts.
Yeah, you know what? I think there's a whole thing where there's Miami and the art scene, and then there's Art Basel. So for those of you that don't know Art Basel, that is an arts festival that came about in Basel in Switzerland, and the next one was here in Miami, and then I want to say Hong Kong, but I think they've got 3 locations now, and so it's become a hotbed for people to celebrities, etc., to come and buy art, etc. And so with that, there's always been an art scene here, but I think Art Basel really made it explode, where people started paying attention to it. And so we have here in Miami, there's a Miami Design District, and there's Wynwood, which is downtown Miami. And there are a lot of installations and art that is dedicated to different things, to different Haitian art, for example, Cuban art. So it's such a mix of people here that you often see the culture reflected in the art. And Art Basel is one of the things that started to bring more attention to it.
Thank you so much. All right, Neil, I think we're ready to take a look at the New York Times from your desk. So
Yes.
Show it to us, and then we will give you our thoughts. Folks, this is the New York Times Read Along with a little Miami flavor. That's Dr. Tachi. I'm Sri. We do this every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on digiventures.group. You go there, you can find our archives. We go back 9 years on social media, but we've been really focused on it the last several years. And look at this. There's so much going on here, Neil. I don't know exactly what's happening, but let's take a look at the paper in New York. I mean, in DC, where you are. I have the magazine and some of the other sections here, but you can talk through the paper, and we'll give you our thoughts as we're looking at it.
I'll focus on the front page. Excuse me. And what I'll do, if you turn your phone camera off, Sri, we can focus on your other camera for the better view. Before I do that, I do want to give people a quick preview. I was in New York last week, and I got to go to the mothership, to the New York Times, and I can't tell you how excited I was to do this. In a few weeks, we're going to find the right day to do this show, but I met with David Dunlap, the historian at the New York Times. He curates the museum on the top floor, and he walked me through the various exhibits. We did interviews. This is just one piece I want to show you. In the 50s, the New York Times did illustrations around fashion. And the person who drew these shoes is a guy named Andy Warhol on contract for the New York Times. Just one of the...
So he was just like a freelance illustrator or what?
Freelance illustrator. And they have that in the museum, the shoes he drew.
That's amazing.
So we will share more of my visit to the New York Times Museum in a couple of weeks, but I just wanted to give you a sense. I can't tell you how excited I was to be there.
I saw in the picture of you and him that there was Bill Cunningham Way behind you, Bill Cunningham Corner. He was the very famous New York Times fashion photographer who did society photography.
Yes.
He once, I was at a gala where he came by. He was this really weakened older gentleman. I didn't recognize him, and he said, "I'm going to take your picture." And then I recognized who he was. But he was so dedicated to his craft that he took the picture, and then with a pen. A lot of people now will give you their phone and say, "Tell us your name," so that they have it, or they'll say, "Write down the name." He, on a pencil, on a notepad, he wrote down each of our names, and I was therefore in the society pages of the New York Times. This was at the Committee to Protect Journalists gala. Let's see who else is here. Diana saying, good morning from San Francisco Bay Area, and Ram saying, Andy Warhol, that's epic. And Diana's always watching us at 5:30 a.m. in California. So we're grateful for that, folks. Check out, stay tuned to the New York Times Read Along every Sunday, 8:30. We have great guests lined up all the way into the summer, and it's going to be lots of fun. And here's the obituary of Bill Cunningham. Among our guests on the show have been folks like Amy Padnani, who was obits editor of the New York Times. So we pay attention to all kinds of stories. Neil, let's go to the front page. And
Absolutely.
And Mary says, I worked at the Times with Bill, who was amazing. What a great eye he had.
He was an amazing. I really enjoyed. Did you see the documentary on Bill Cunningham?
Yes, yeah.
It just amazing, the eye he had, and that vest. That was his signature thing.
Yep, exactly. So Neil, we're looking at the front page. There's inside Copter 17's terrifying ride above an inferno. So go ahead, over to you. I don't know if we can hear you. We'll just
there we go.
Chance to turn on his
there
mic.
We go.
Yep.
So we had looked at the front page earlier. That's why it's a little bit disheveled. But that display article is about the Los Angeles fire, the wildfire, and this one pilot that was trying to address that and kind of cover that. We looked at the lead story. Americans warm to Trump's ideas, if not to Trump, which I want to sit down and read this closely. And I think that I'm going to jump in because I think there are some pie charts inside that help explain that. Because there we go. So there's the polling data. Poll finds American support for Trump's policies exceeds their support for Trump. So what is this? What's the detail here on immigration? Deporting immigrants who are here illegally and have criminal records. 87% of the people support that. Deporting immigrants who are here illegally and arrived here over the last 4 years, 63%. Deporting all immigrants who are here illegally, 55%. Ending birthright citizenship for children born to immigrants, down to 41% at least. And then ending protection from deportation for immigrants who were children when they entered the U.S. illegally, 34%. That is striking, definitely striking. The rest of the front page section, there's actually the copter story. They give a full page to that, and underneath, for Copter 17, terrifying ride above Inferno, race to put out the Eden fire posed a severe test for firefighting pilots. So let's go back. We looked at the front page earlier. I particularly like page 2, and we're going to go to that. Of course, the paper is all kind of mangled now. The inside, the story behind the story, which is absolutely my favorite. I described the New York Times Read Along as almost like a video version of Times Insider, and this is interesting. Sri, we're definitely going to talk to Amy about this. She wrote the piece. AI helped us review the places we've been. One of the things that they did is a review. This is the 20th anniversary of the 52 places to go. So I'm guessing they used AI to look back over the 20 years of places to go sections. That'll definitely be interesting. Let's take a look at what else. David Dunlap has a piece in this week's paper. It's every 2 weeks that he has a piece. And this one, exploring an artifact from the New York Times, an inaugural flag. And so this is 4 years ago, Joseph Biden was inaugurated president. National Mall was filled with crowds. The strangest part about it was the silence. Ruth Fremson, a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer for the Times, said in a recent email, she was on assignment that day. The silence felt like the country was collectively holding its breath to see if the transition to power would actually happen. And so that certainly was something we all were paying attention to last year. So this is remembering the storytelling power of artifacts collected by the Times great Washington photographer George Thames, whom she met while she worked at the Washington Times. She donated the one flag pictured here to the Museum of the Times, where it was displayed until 2024, when it was replaced with artifacts from the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Wow. Wow.
So that's very interesting.
More on the I
We'll
see
go.
the TikTok ban. I see.
Yeah.
What else on there? Yeah.
So on the
let's see
we'll
the ad.
start
One
with
second. Let's see the ad.
We will.
Yeah.
I was going to say the international story is Trump's return has unnerved world leaders, but not India. And so this is the cut line. Cutouts of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Donald Trump loom in Ahmedabad. The departing U.S. Ambassador in India, Eric Garcetti, former mayor of Los Angeles, said nothing can threaten the trajectory of U.S.-India relations. I will say, Sri, that, and I don't know if you followed this, but I saw my mom forwarded a video that there's some kind of controversy because Narendra Modi was not invited to the inauguration or not, invited to some event, and he's feeling a little bit left out. So there may be a little bit of a
I've not followed that. I've not followed that. One thing, folks, that I would say to everybody who's interested in the coverage of India, we partner with Scroll.in, one of the great independent websites in India, and we're live on their channels as well. And so we're always grateful to Naresh Fernandez and the team for having us. And so if you're interested in Indian news, check out Scroll.in and see all the coverage that they're doing. So this is an interesting piece, Neil, and I look forward to reading it. Let's look at a couple of other things. Yeah,
absolutely. So that ad that we were looking at that I passed over real quickly, it's a big congratulations, President Trump. You can just see the bottom of the headline, and then I'm honored to support your call to make America great again by bringing manufacturing jobs back home. We've already built 70 factories to create 12,000 American manufacturing jobs, and under your leadership, we'll create many more. Anthony Pratt, Chairman, Pratt Industries.
Just 1 second on that. I will just say, so what does it mean under his leadership? So he built them up to 4 years ago and then stopped during the Biden administration.
Clearly,
and now it's going to start again. These are...
I've never seen this amount of kowtowing. Obviously, we're living in different times, but to take out a full page ad.
Yeah, this is a suck up ad.
It really is.
Yeah. This really, really irritating. Let me just say here, look who's watching, Neil.
Yes. Alia Papa Georgiou.
Yes,
from Brussels, former guest.
Yeah, former guest, and happy frosty afternoon from Brussels.
Yeah.
She was a wonderful guest on the show, and we're glad to have you watching with us. And Naomi says, Scroll.in is a valuable news resource accessible to everyone. What a great comment. So thank you for that and your support, Naomi.
And of course, Alia is the president of the Press Club of Belgium, Press Club of Brussels, rather. So it definitely was great. We got a good European perspective on the news when she joined the show.
We should have her back again this year if she's willing. And look at what Kaveri says. Alia is brilliant. And so just to connect everybody, Alia is in Brussels. Kaveri is an Irish Indian, right now happens to be in India herself, and has been a guest on the show. And we're in Miami, and Neil's in DC. A really international conversation. We just have a few minutes left, so he's going to show us a couple more things, and then I want to just go through our magazine and the book review.
Absolutely.
Oh, and there's the
just in time.
Neil, can you hear the music?
I can't. No.
You can't. That's perfect. Amazing. It's so loud right here. There are DJs. I was going to say there are DJs like at every restaurant in South Beach, every hotel, and they're just 24 hours going nonstop.
9:45 in the morning. That's something.
On a Sunday.
That's Miami for you.
So flipping through real quick about Gaza, about the the peace deal, that's something we should talk about, Sri. The peace agreement in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas that will hopefully bring people home and end the war in Gaza. Still not sure how that's going to play out. I think the Israeli War Cabinet just now I hear the music. Just approved the deal. On Friday, I think it was. But we still have to see how that plays out and what actually happens. The national section has this big piece about the wildfire in Los Angeles, and I think I remember seeing it online. They have several before and after pictures of various neighborhoods that it shows the devastation. It's just incredible what has happened there. Just incredible.
They say that the fires have affected double the size of Manhattan.
Yeah.
So if you think about how big Manhattan is, and just gives you a sense of that, and our hearts go out to everybody there. Really problematic what's happened there. By the way, Bibi has said that he reserves the right to resume the war at any time. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to keep the peace, but you never know what's going to happen with Mr. Trump.
And here's a piece that they have worth mentioning: some potential targets of pledged retribution. Of course, both from President Trump, or as they mentioned, I forget which show that I saw it on. They referred to him as President-elect Trump, because they were also referring to President Biden, right? Former presidents keep the title forever, but he's really president-elect until tomorrow afternoon. Some potential targets, and Kash Patel, his nominee for FBI, right?
Unqualified in every way.
Unqualified, has an enemies list. It includes Jack Smith, the special counsel, Letitia James from New York, Arthur Engeron, the New York City Supreme Court judge, Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis from Fulton County, Liz Cheney, of course, other members of the committee, and then his appointees, General Mark Milley, Michael Cohen, John Bolton, James Comey, Andrew McCabe. These are all familiar names to us, and the media in general. He includes, Mark Zuckerberg is on this list, which is interesting.
Look at her reaction. That's perfect reaction.
Right?
Now he is sucked up so much. Now we know why he was doing that.
Exactly.
He's hoping.
Yeah.
Let's go to
Go ahead.
to the magazine, Sri.
Yeah, sure. Just to look at here, a world of hurt. As many as 2 billion people suffer from chronic pain. Can science finally bring us relief? This should be a very important story for so many folks, no matter what age. I think it's a big problem, especially in the United States. Our lifestyles, our food, all of that's affecting how we deal with pain. And that's something that we've seen also people of color have extra problems and less medical care in these issues as well. We're sort of shouting here because there's so much music. And this is an interesting cover of the book review, The Hipster Grifter. If you'll never believe me, Carrie Farrell details going from internet notoriety to self-knowledge in a captivating, sharp, and funny memoir. I don't know who this is. Do you know who this is?
Yeah, so apparently I remember hearing about her. It's almost in the Anna Delvey type of thing where she basically conned a bunch of people out of their money, like people she dated or whatever. She would go after them and con them out of money. She actually was arrested and she spent time in jail. And she now, she couldn't get away from that past of her grifter past. And so she writes a book about it.
And there you go.
Yeah.
She's going to be very successful, I'm sure. The Arts and Leisure cover is Dion Primetime Sanders, who was a very successful football and baseball player, which is very rare. And he's also a coach in Colorado. He also coached a historically black college football, Jackson State. Mm-hmm. And he's just a very charismatic, very appealing character who now has a shot at becoming the coach of the most storied franchise in American football, the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, apparently, though, he's not on the short list for that yet.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but not yet.
Hey, I thought you don't keep track of sports.
I keep track
pop
enough,
culture.
yeah,
Pop culture.
to know about this. And then, that there's this whole thing. I think there's some of us that are still hurt that he left Jackson State.
Okay.
So
because he promised to stay and he didn't.
Yeah. So, yeah.
He says, this is the confidence of him that I think a lot of people like, his swagger. He says, I'm in the third quarter of my life and I'm winning. I've never stopped winning. That's what frustrates people, but I'm just getting started. Dion has long shown that he knows how to stay in the spotlight, first through broadcast television, now with YouTube, social media, and streaming and coaching. I mean, this is not just somebody who is online. He's doing a lot more, and that's what's going on. So what we're going to do is give Dr. Tachi a break for about a minute or two while Neil and I talk about next week's show and what's coming up. And then we'll have Dr. Tachi give us some more information about her work, how we can follow her, and how we can support her IndieSoup network and so much more. So with that, Neil, I'll have you come back on the air.
Absolutely. And while I do that, Sri, I want to just give folks, if they wanted a different perspective on the conversation we had with Dr. Tachi, you might want to check this out, which is a bird's eye view of Dr. Tachi and Sri reviewing the New York Times. If you look up Sri, you might be able to say hi to Rupa up there if she's still watching from some angle. Not sure where she is. Rupa sent that picture along for us to share on the air, but we need to unmute your mic, Sri, on your phone.
No, it's such a racket here. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But this was another great show and a great perspective. If you joined us late, we always remind you that when the show is over, you'll be able to watch it from the beginning on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and our Digimentors website. It'll take a moment to put it on Instagram. We have to upload the show there, but it was great. Dr. Tachi has been a longtime viewer of the show, a great supporter of the work that we're doing. She also is a frequent viewer of the show I do on Thursdays, Sri, Shining Light on Shadows. And I wanted to give a quick plug for that show, if with your permission, on Thursday coming up. On January 23rd, we'll have a guest who's familiar to our New York Times read-along audience. Melissa Lutke will be our guest on episode 22, and we'll be focusing on keeping quiet about clinical depression. As you know, Dawn and I do this show to help reduce the stigma around mental health, and Melissa reached out to us last spring when she first heard about the show, saying she'd be interested in being a guest. She had never shared publicly her own experience with clinical depression. She was hospitalized about 30 years ago. It was a singular episode. She stayed in therapy after that, but she never shared it with anyone, much less publicly. She said she never even really shared it privately. And she agreed to be on the show. And on Friday, she wrote her Substack about that experience. And so we're so grateful that she'll be joining us and sharing.
And she's a very successful journalist, and she was on our show talking about her latest book. So this shows us that you could have mental health issues and people may not know what you're going through. And that's what Neil, through his bravery, has talked about on that show for a couple of years now. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at some comments. We're going to bring Dr. Tachi back. Have fun in Miami Street. It's freezing in New York City, says Ram. And Naomi says, has it really been 9 years? Such a fresh show this morning. So that's because of her. Fresh princess of Miami. And or queen. What do you prefer? Queen or princess?
Either one works.
Okay, either one works. All right. So tell us about your work again, and tell us where people can find you and how we can support you and the IndieSoup network.
Absolutely. So once again, IndieSoup Media is a independent network for independent content creators. We we try to give a voice to those on a wider scale by bringing ourselves together. There's strength in numbers, right? And so we're like benefiting from each other's audiences. And we are on a break now. We come back February 10th, but you can find us under at IndieSoup Media. Oh, thank you. Find us on IndieSoup Media on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook Live, and then we do a really cool thing on Thursdays. Most Thursdays we do a live house DJ set on the Instagram page of at DJ Mick Ford. So he has a huge Euro Soulful House community. So he's our resident DJ, and that's the way we pull social media into it as well.
Amazing, amazing, and all this energy you have is so inspiring. When you watch her show on Instagram, you'll see the way she talks, how she brings people in. It's really inspiring. It's contagious, her energy. And thank you so much for spending Sunday morning with us here in DJ land. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say goodbye to you, and then I'm just going to walk over to show people a little bit about Miami as we pack up here, and then we'll say goodbye to everybody. But thank you so much, Dr. Tachi. You're great, and we really appreciate you. And I'm going to take a quick walk,
Absolutely.
and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
And that's just the website for IndieSoup Media. I wanted to get that out for
IndieSoup
folks
Media, yes. Thank you for
before
showing
we
that.
leave. Absolutely.
Yes. So here is the pool side in Miami. And Neil, let me know if you can see the skies here, the palm trees, etc.
Yes, we can see it, Sri, and I'm just what's the purpose of making us so jealous? I'm just trying to understand
That's
what
the
you're
purpose,
doing.
making you jealous. That's the purpose. All right, I'll let you go. Thank you very much, everybody. See you 8:30 a.m. Sundays. Our next episode is with Amy Virshup, the travel editor of the New York Times. You don't want to miss that. Neil's going to get to interview her. I'm super jealous. And the 52 places you will go. So check that out. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye. Another masterclass is Ron. Bye, everybody.
There's Ron's comment right at the end too.
Yeah,
And there's Dr. Tachi. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.